What's up everybody, Coach Mills here coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down exactly how to pick the perfect crosshair, everything you need to know about graphical settings, different brand new settings introduced in the game, anything from sensitivity to most used mice. We're going to break it all down in this video so that you have everything you need in order to climb the ladder with ease with the perfect settings and hardware. But the GameLeap website is your one-stop shop. If you really want to improve to Immortal and beyond, you need some tools that is going to help you climb, and on the GameLeap website we have in-depth VOD reviews, advanced tips and tricks, and so much more. Do yourself a favor and just go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, the first thing that people are going to ask when it comes to a crosshair is what color should you use? And honestly, every single color is used one way or the other. Either a streamer or a pro player, between every single color, almost all of them are used. Now, that being said, however, the three most popular colors are white, green, and cyan. So if you want to go with the popular choice, then one of those three would be your best bet. That being said, because of the way that Valorant looks, almost all of the crosshair colors are viable. If you prefer another crosshair color, there is nothing to say that you can't use that crosshair color, and I'm sure that there's some pro somewhere that is using the exact same color, because like I said, all of the colors are used. The whole point of a crosshair is to have a distinction between the backgrounds, so as long as you're picking a crosshair that you think distinguishes itself enough from the general background of weapons and people for you to basically easily line up your shots, then all power to you, pick whatever color you want. Now, the next thing about crosshair is outline, and it really depends on the crosshair and, like I said, your personal preference. Maybe you want a outline on your crosshair, a black outline. If you don't want your crosshair to ever blend with the background at all, an outline can really distinguish it, but sometimes it can get in the way, and not every pro player uses outline. Some of them do, some of them don't, and it's really, like I said, up to personal preference. Try both and see what you like. Now, in general though, like a good 99% of people fall into these two types of crosshairs, so typically you should be using one of these two in either the dot or the small cross with a slight center gap. We're not messing around with circles, we're not messing around with huge Texas-sized crosshairs. We're just using either a small cross with a center gap so that if someone runs through, you can easily see their head. Of course, you could have a cross with no center gap, but that, like I said, is personal preference, and it's not as used as one with a gap. And then there's just the dot, which some people just like the straight up dot. And this crosshair is pretty much always viable in any FPS game, but some people really dislike it. I know I'm one of those that really dislike the dot, but it's up to you whether you like it or not. Now, the next setting we got to talk about with crosshair is movement or firing inaccuracy. Both of these should be turned off almost no matter what if you're trying to be actually playing. But as far as movement inaccuracy, it can be useful for training counter strafing, and I guess the firing inaccuracy as well could be useful for training recoil control. But realistically, these settings should be turned off when you're actually playing, and really these are like training wheels to just get started. They're not actually legitimately supposed to be used, and 0% of pros use either one of these. Now, I know I gave you a lot of personal preference advice in this section, so I'm going to show you what I personally use in this crosshair, which is a tiny cross with a slight middle gap, and it's a pink crosshair, which is probably not one of the more popular ones, but I personally like it. I used to have it as green, and I switched it to pink. Sometimes I switch it back and forth, but this type of crosshair could be changed to any color if you want to. If you want to know these settings, I'm going to flash them up on the screen here. Really simply, here's the general settings, and here is the inner lines in 1 inner line opacity, 4 inner line length, 2 inner line thickness, 2 offset, and then of course the movement and firing error off. Now, the only thing, like I said, that I would change is either the color here or maybe having an outline around it, because sometimes it does fade a little bit, but I'm personally fine with this, but you might not be. And you should never be copying any pro or anyone's crosshair. You should just be looking at crosshairs that you like, trying a few ones out, and if you find one that really sticks with you, you can always make little adaptations to make it perfect, and then you'll be good to go for the rest of your Valorant career. Now, moving on to the next settings that we got to talk about is none other than graphics. And for graphics, the entire point of putting your graphics down is you want to max out your FPS almost no matter what, and typically I would probably suggest medium in general. Medium is what most pros use because low gives you almost 0 FPS gain, very, very little, but slightly noticeable texture differences. And I'd only really go to low if you have like a potato of a computer or something. Now moving on to monitor, of course, you're gonna want a 144 hertz monitor or better. This is true pretty much across the board. Every single pro, every single one of them uses a 144 hertz monitor or better. And if you don't have this, I'm gonna be honest, this is a competitive disadvantage. And if you can't get one, I understand, that's fine, but you still wanna be maxing out your FPS as much as possible so that your game runs buttery smooth. But Christmas is right around the corner, so a monitor and a GameLeap sub, that's exactly what you should get for Christmas, you know what I'm saying? But just make sure that if you get a 144 hertz monitor, make sure that you go into your advanced display settings in your actual computer, because I cannot tell you how many people that I've met or run into that have not actually turned on their 144 hertz monitor in their computer, and they just thought they've had. I even have a personal story about a friend who basically convinced me to get a 144 hertz monitor because he thought it was amazing, and he actually never had it turned on. And it was so funny because it was just all placebo for him, but when he actually turned it on, then it was insane, because I noticed it immediately, but he just thought he had it. Anyways, that's not the point, but it's just funny that this can happen to people. They can have a 144 hertz monitor or even better and just go years and years and never turn it on. Don't let that be you. Now, I mentioned it in another video, but it's really important to re-mention it. The new reflex setting by NVIDIA, if you upgrade the game and install the new drivers for NVIDIA GeForce graphics, you are going to be able to activate the reflex feature in-game as long as you don't have an AMD graphics card. Now, this feature is just gonna make the game run way more buttery smooth. On average, you're gonna have far less stutters, and almost everyone should have it on. Pretty much everyone should have it on. It's gonna be default to on, but you're gonna notice that there's gonna be an on plus boost feature inside the settings of the game. It's gonna appear. There's gonna be on, off, and on plus boost. Only activate the on plus boost if you have a really high-end computer that keeps throttling down its power. So if that's happening, you could turn this on to see if it improves your performance, but if it doesn't, always just turn it off and just test and see if this helps. If it doesn't, just keep it on. On is going to help everyone across the board, even the Riot devs had said so. So basically every single person wants to have it on, but if you're testing that boost feature, make sure that you're monitoring your temps just to make sure that your temps aren't running too high. Now moving on to the next setting that we got to talk about. We got to talk about the minimap, and most people have it to where it rotates so that it's a lot easier for you to make calls and understand where people are coming from. They have it so it rotates so that they can easily just intuitively see someone on the right side of the minimap and then just flick to the right instead of having to adjust according to their orientation or where they are and things like that. So that's just something to think about. Now, this is a general case. Not everyone has it rotate. So if you really prefer it not to rotate and you wanted to have it fixed, that's fine. But I would highly suggest that you do it based on side instead of just having it fixed to where it's always one side or top to bottom, because that can definitely get really complicated. I would highly suggest at least fix it to one side. Now, that being said, however, almost all pros zoom it out to see a large enough of the map. They need to be able to see not the entire map, but almost all the map from their given position so that they can see what their allies are seeing. They can see what enemies are at different parts of the map and better execute plays. So make sure that you zoom it out enough to where you can see a pretty large chunk of the map. Now moving on to the next setting. The next big setting we got to talk about is none other than the bodies section, and this is personal preference, but you might want to turn the visible bodies off because sometimes the bodies laying there can actually get in the way of certain angles. Like imagine you're playing like at a low ground, or you're playing like in vents on the actual zip line, and you kill someone right there, their body could just lay there right in your way. And on top of that, if you have a low-end CPU and a whole bunch of people's bodies start piling up, it can lag your computer a little bit. So you could turn on the holographic image feature where it just shows a holographic image of the dead and goes away when you're close, so it doesn't get in the way of anything. This is a personal preference. You don't have to put this on, but it's something that I personally like, and definitely give it a shot and see if you like it in your games. Now moving on to the next section we got to talk about sensitivity, and I'm not going to tell you the perfect sensitivity either, but what I will say is that the average EDPI, which is your DPI and the in-game sensitivity, the average EDPI is about 270. Now there are alterations to that, with someone like Hiko having an extremely high, way up there, even 200 to 300 more, and someone like Brax that is on the very low end of the spectrum at 100 or even 150 less than this. All you gotta understand is that everyone's different. There is no perfect sensitivity for anyone. Don't be copying anyone's sensitivity. Don't let anyone suggest to you that there is one true sensitivity. All you need is a sensitivity that lets you balance the three types or the three uses of your arm which is your fingers, your wrist, and your arm. I typically think it's best if you use your arm for the big 180 movements, your wrist for the on-screen flicking and tracking, and your fingers for the minute changes. As long as you have control of all three of these zones, you're going to be the most accurate, and you're going to be able to use different parts of your hand for different types of aiming on screen, which just gives you the most diversity of actions, which of course is just going to make you more finely tuned and just better overall. That's why I really don't suggest having like an EDPI of like 1,000 plus or something crazy like that. But you get the idea of this. There is no perfect sensitivity, but I gave you a good average and a good place to start working from. Now, let's talk about the most used mouse, and by far, the most used mouse is the Logitech G Pro Wireless. Now, that being said, a lot of players have a sponsorship with this, but a lot of players also would not sacrifice their career for using a bad mouse, and a lot of people love or swear by most Logitech mice. Now, that being said, Logitech are a great company, and they make great mice, but I don't think that they're the only competitive company that makes great mice. Zowie makes great mice. Razer, the Death Adder, is really good if you have a bigger hand and you like a bigger mouse. Or me personally, I like the Glorious Model O, that is a brand of really light mice, similar to the Final Mouse brand, that are all really on the lighter side, that are designed for esports. But there are so many different types that you can choose from. But the only thing I ask is that you don't use your grandmother's mouse from like 1922, and just get one of these esports related mice that has a customizable DPI, and you'll be fine. Now, speaking of mouse properties, you gotta make sure to disable mouse acceleration. You're gonna wanna go to mouse properties, pointer options, and uncheck enhanced pointer precision. I can't tell you how many people I've found that have this turned on because no one ever told them to turn it off. And I don't even know why this thing is even a setting. I mean, it just messes up gamers everywhere. But basically, it makes it so your movement speed is exponential and not linear, which just means the faster you move, the faster your mouse moves, like multiplied. It's just like a giant mess. You don't want it, trust me. Just turn this crap off and never turn it on again. Make sure to turn it off on every single new computer you ever play on. Now, the last thing that we gotta talk about is, in my personal opinion, you need a mechanical keyboard as far as like hardware is concerned. Membrane keyboards are fine, especially some of the better ones, but nothing beats a mechanical keyboard that you can rely on. It's gonna be incredibly consistent, it's gonna be satisfying to use, and it's gonna be far better for playing high-level gameplay. So just take my word for it. Definitely, if you're looking to buy a new keyboard or upgrade, definitely make sure that you're getting a mechanical keyboard for some of you newer FPS players. Now, the GameLeap.com website is designed to help anyone climb if they want to, with in-depth VOD reviews made by Radiant tier players, advanced tips and tricks, and so much more. Do yourself a favor and go check it out in the links down below, and I can't wait to see you there. But thanks so much for coming by to the video. If you have any other suggestions about settings or anything like that, definitely let people know in the comments down below so the community can learn from your valuable insight. Thanks so much for being part of the GameLeap community. I really appreciate you. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.